Elias Moore, infamously known as the Smokestack Twins or Smoke and Stack, played by Michael B. Jordan. They pick up their cousin Sammy Moore, known as Preacher Boy, played by Miles Caton. The twins have returned to their hometown of Clarksdale, Mississippi to open up a juke joint after serving in World War I and working for Al Capone in Chicago before pulling off a heist that gave them enough booze, resources, and money to come back home and take advantage of the bootlegging industry. Their little cousin Sammy was the missing piece with his obvious musical abilities and his not so obvious ancestral inheritance of being a griot. The film starts off by giving us a bit of lore about griot. Griot or griots aren't just performers. They're custodians of ancestral memory. They remember the lineage of kings, the triumphs of ancestors, and the wisdom that's buried in time. Other cultures around the world had their versions of the same ancestral human library. In Ireland, they were called the Fili, and in Choctaw land, they were called firekeepers. This ability in the community is very sacred, and it can attract abundance, but it also can attract evil. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. So before the twins picked up their cousin, they met with the owner of a sawmill to purchase and use the spot for their juke joint. Hogwood had come late to their meeting, throwing the brothers' plans off to pick up their cousin and get everything ready to open up the juke that night. Smoke in the blue hat, Stack in the red hat. Smoke realizes that the floors in this dusty building are clean to the touch, and it piques his twins' eyebrows as well, to say the least. Hogwood takes the money and a caution from Smoke not to make any attempts to get any more money out of them or to enter their property or be met with full force. Hogwood offers the notion that the clan had been disbanded and the boys have nothing to worry about. I want to stop right here and bring a bit of historical context to what's going on around this time. After World War I ended in 1918, a wave of Black soldiers returned home expecting greater opportunity and respect after fighting for America overseas. Instead, they faced brutal racism, job discrimination, and violent backlash, especially during the Red Summer of 1919, when race riots exploded across dozens of United States cities. Many Black veterans were barred from getting steady work, blackballed from unions, and targeted by white supremacist groups. In this harsh environment, organized crime became a pragmatic route to survival for some of these Black veterans. I mean, these guys had military training, they knew tactics, discipline, logistics, and how to use weapons as well. And these skills made them a very valuable asset in the crime underworld. In cities like Chicago, New York, Detroit, and New Orleans, some Black soldiers started working as security for speakeasies, running bootleg operations, and acting as the muscle for number rackets, or they even managed the gambling dens themselves.
Now that's correct. Because I know y'all remember the documentary I showed y'all a while back about Odessa Madre and some of the things that was going on at that time, like the numbers rackets and the jail joints and all of these things that were going down. Like, I mean, I'm surprised they ain't mentioned DC because DC was a big part of that as well. DC was probably one of the center of some of that Harlem Renaissance or that Renaissance era as well. So like, he's definitely truthful here. I didn't like how they were trying to, like Tahanga said, trying to put the Black people more towards the African types of griot, if you will, when clearly we've been in America all this time. So, I mean, obviously I didn't like a lot of those African hits or African nuances there, but, they're never going to not do that to us until we straighten that shit out ourselves.
The mafia and other ethnic crime syndicates, the Italians, Irish, and Jewish, saw these veterans as hard, smart, and trained, hiring them as enforcers, drivers, debt collectors, and even bodyguards. Sometimes they worked independently. Other times they operated under mafia families who needed tough, reliable men who they could pretty much underpay. While many Black veterans weren't made men, because of the race barriers, they weren't able to actually be in those families. They definitely played a critical frontline role in the day-to-day money-making operations of organized crime during the Prohibition era. Their involvement not only fueled the underground economy, but it also laid the foundation for independent Black underworld empires to rise in the 1930s and 40s. And Smoke and Stack seem to be two brothers who were trying to capitalize off of all this motion going on in the industry. Now, on the other hand, October 15th, 1932, sat at a pivotal crossroads in American history, right at the heart of the Great Depression and those final throes of Prohibition. Franklin D. Roosevelt was aggressively campaigning against Herbert Hoover. He was promoting his vision of the New Deal while the nation reeled from record unemployment and financial collapse. Meanwhile, the streets were ruled by bootleggers and gangsters taking full advantage of Prohibition's chaos. Organized crime families were rapidly evolving, and with the dude like Al Capone in prison, new figures like Frank Nitti, Dutch Schultz, and Lucky Luciano were getting busy to solidify power. In fact, the groundwork for the mafia's infamous National Commission was quietly being laid during this period, forever altering the criminal underworld's business model. Beneath the surface, America was undergoing an invisible but unstoppable shift. From broken institutions to new experiments in government power, from gangster street wars to organized crime syndicates, and from the Prohibition era secrecy to a new, more openly lawless capitalism. I love that Coogler chose this time period for the film because it's one of the most pivotal moments in American history, a crossroads, if you will. Smoke and Stack were visionaries at a time when get in where you fit in was a make or break motto.
I agree with him on that. I'm really obsessed with this time period, just this whole time period, because it was, like he said, a really interesting crossroads, a really interesting point in history, like where, we were rising, we were into a lot of things. And this whole era was pretty phenomenal. But we're going to talk more about it. I'm gonna try not to keep cutting off and doing too much. I want to try to let the video rock. But yeah, that was a great time. Not a great time, I wasn't there, but an interesting time in history. Shout out to all the American Indians pulling up. Alabama. Who else I just saw? Tamiri Bull. Peace, y'all.
So Hogwood being late to that meeting made the twins have to call an audible by splitting up, with Smoke taking the truck with the equipment into town, securing the food, and getting some help from Bo and Grace Child, while pretty much letting it be known that the Smokestack twins were back in town and they meant business. He hires a young girl off the street to watch his truck while he handles business with the Childs, and he gives her a lesson about negotiation, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. He shoots two guys trying to rob his truck in broad daylight. Meanwhile, Stack and Sammy go to find more music talent and put the word out about the grand opening at the local train station. That's where they find Delta Slim being played by Delroy Lindo. Sammy bumps into a young lady named Pearline.
Okay, y'all. I loved Delroy Lindo's performance in this movie. Not only in this movie, but other movies he's been in as well. Obviously, we all know Crooklyn. That's one of my favorites. I mean, we grew up watching that tape till it popped. Just shout out to Delroy Lindo, still working, still doing his big one, and taking full ownership of his roles and embodying it and bodying it at the same time. Yeah, he really did really impress me. So shout out to Delroy Lindo.
Who's admiring his guitar skills, and he invites her to the juke joint. Stack also runs into one of his old flames named Mary, who still loves him, and he obviously has a soft spot for her as well. Both women are married, by the way, sinners. Now Smoke heads over to his old flame's house, Annie, who he shares the loss of a child with, and she happens to be a practitioner of hoodoo in the local community. Smoke pretty much pulls up on her to see if she'll do the cooking for the opening night. A few more characters were picked up on the way, and they all make it back to the sawmill and start converting it into their juke joint while it gets closer to sundown. Meanwhile, not too far away from the juke joint, a man with smoking burnt skin is running to a nearby house to ask for help. The man claims to be victims of Choctaw bandits, and the man and lady of the house answer the door with shotguns drawn. Their names are Bert and Joan. The couple allows the man to come in, but it turns out that that man is indeed a vampire running away from those Choctaw hunters, who no doubt are aware of what that man actually is and the dangers of the coming nightfall.
See, this is what I didn't like right here. That's what I didn't like, that portrayal, because we know Choctaw Indians don't look like this. But I mean, the ones of today do. But to even have this type of portrayal, you know what I'm saying? It just even goes to show how bad the history is twisted up and jacked up. And, you know, we got to change these narratives. We do. We do. We got to be the ones that get on the front lines of this. Because if we don't, they're going to continue to whitewash Indians.
So the Choctaw hunters leave before the sun sets, and the vampire Remick takes on the husband and wife to join his vampire legion. Now, up until this part of the film, there was no mention of vampires, and this is like 45 minutes in. From there, we see the Smokestack Twins' newly purchased building go from an old sawmill to the bump and juke joint. And Remick and his two reborn recruits make their way to the juke joint to find Sammy after hearing him play and sing, which is an exercise of his griot abilities. Now, Sammy was playing the guitar of one of his ancestors, who was the father of the Smokestack Twins. Now, when the Smokestack Twins were born, Stack was the second one, and he got stuck inside of his mother sideways. And Mary's mother actually helped her give birth to the twins, but the mother passed away during childbirth. Their father probably blamed Stack for the death of his wife, and he took it out on Stack through abuse and beating him throughout his childhood. He didn't really beat Smoke as much, but Smoke ended up killing the father to protect his brother. So both parents' lives were ended in connection with the twins, Stack with the mother during birth, and Smoke with the father protecting Stack. Sammy, having this connection to the guitar, coupled with his gift, played a tune that ended up being my favorite scene of the film. Sammy taps into his abilities on the stage in front of the entire juke joint and begins summoning spirits from the past and future. Sammy's gift and the way it was depicted on the screen, along with the different musical undertones woven through time and culture, for me, this was the visual highlight of the film. It reminded me of that episode from the Wu-Tang American Saga on Hulu, when the RZA was sampling and he was able to summon the ancestor who actually turned him on to the records that he was sampling. In that scene, they were displaying the RZA's griot abilities, and like the film Sinners, they also used the firefly symbolism, which in West African cultures represents the messengers between the Orun, or spirit realm, and the Aya, or earth. Even in Choctaw culture, fireflies represent the embers of the ancestors believed to guide the travelers at night. And it was at this point of the movie where things really start heating up, because it was Sammy's gift that actually attracted Remick to the juke joint. I mean, they even used the firefly symbolism when the monsters got cornbread. The fireflies were all over the place. And it was such a sweet touch because the vampire's eyes glow, and they intertwined the fireflies with the vampire's eyes glowing in the background. I thought it was such a dope horror touch. It wasn't actually stated in the film, but Remick also appears to possess the gifts of the Philly, much like Sammy does. One thing I absolutely loved about this film was the usage of actual common vampire lore. I mean, you're staying true to the roots of the Deep South and the story of the sharecroppers and the historical aspect of it. Why not just stick to the plan with the vampire lore as well? When someone is turned, a transfer of memories and talent occurred that binds each person to Remick and turns his own memories and abilities within to the person that he actually turns. So much like common vampire lore, these vampires are actually a community in the mind as well as body. So pretty much Remic's motive becomes to obtain Sammy's gift and give Sammy his gift. And he states this close to the end of the movie. Remick actually tells Sammy this at some point. Remick also displays his abilities once he's gotten most of the people from the juke joint turned into vampires. He does this super dope rendition of the Rocky Road to Dublin, which is a song about the struggle of poor Irish folk making their way to Dublin, like a promised land of sorts. Now, let's take this time to examine something about the film that stood out to me heavily before the release of the film, and that's how they promoted it. Each of the character promo photos for the release stated, "We are all sinners," which made me immediately think of Catholicism. Catholics believe that we are indeed all sinners, even newborn babies, and we need God's grace for our entire lives. Slim even calls himself a sinner. Sammy rebels against his father and the church. Mary and Pearline were both married women who committed adultery. Well, you get the picture. Near the end of the film, Remick catches Sammy and begins to perform an unholy baptism of sorts. And Sammy starts to recite the 23rd Psalm. And Remick joins him, stating that he remembers these very words being forced on his people by men who invaded their lands. Now, this is where the Catholicism actually comes in. Catholicism hit Ireland hard around the 5th century, mainly through missionaries like St. Patrick, who himself was actually a British Roman. Now, if Remick remembers this, he was alive around that time. Either that or he has the memories of whoever turned him into a vampire that may have experienced this. Who knows? I don't know. But for hundreds of years, the British Empire suppressed Irish Catholics violently. No voting rights, no property ownership, no education in Catholic schools. This oppression locked Catholicism into the Irish identity. And after events like Cromwell's conquest of Ireland, tens of thousands of Irish men, women, and children were captured, sold, and shipped to colonies, especially Barbados, Jamaica, and the colony of Virginia here in the U.S.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Many were literally called white slaves and advertised in newspapers.
Ain't no call, baby. They were white slaves. They were slaves, okay? They were. And they don't like to admit it. They want to call them indentured servants and do all that. No, baby. No, baby.
Auctioned off, beaten, essayed, and pretty much worked to death. Their treatment was just as brutal as African slaves. However, their time was temporary as indentured servants, but indigenous American and African slaves' time was permanent, and you could become a slave through inheritance. A lot of people don't know this, but the first slaves in America were actually white and many were Irish. But just to be clear,
and if you've been on my channel time and time again, you know, I've explained this about this idea of indentured servitude, this idea of them trying to, you know, these new people who are here now, these people who have taken over our government, et cetera, are trying to, you know, smooth over history with this idea that they only had a limited time. No, that's not true. They sold all their rights. All their rights were taken and they were sent here to work. Okay, so you know, this young man doing a good job, but you know, I just want to keep it in perspective. Okay.
There's a distinct difference in chattel slavery and indentured servitude. In 1847, during the Great Irish Famine, the Choctaw Nation, who themselves had recently survived the brutal Trail of Tears, raised and sent about $170 to help the starving Irish people. Now, on the Spotify page for the Sinner's soundtrack, A newspaper article dated in 1911 alludes to Remick's arrival to America. You can go check that out. When he was being chased by those Choctaw hunters, he said that they had killed his wife. And at first, I took this as a ploy for sympathy from Bert and Joan, but the fact that Remick was actually being chased by Choctaw and Bert indicating that there are no Indians in that area, given the history between the Irish and the Choctaw, makes me wonder if he did indeed have a female with him. And he possibly actually went out to seek the Choctaw, knowing the history behind them. But then when he got there, they realized what he was and they turned on him. Because Bert says that there are no Indians in that area. And the Choctaw definitely wanted to hightail it up out of there as the sun was going down. So, did those Choctaw hunters really kill his wife? The film also dives into the relationship with Chinese Americans in the South. The meeting with Smoke and the Childs display the complex positioning of the Chinese Americans in the Jim Crow South. After the Civil War, Black Americans began carving out their own economic strongholds with towns like Mound Bayou. Smoke actually references this community when talking to Sammy about giving up his own juke joint dreams. And he suggested for Sammy to go down to Mound Bayou. Places like Rosewood, Tulsa, Greenwood, and even parts of Harlem where Black farmers, doctors, bankers, and business owners thrived independently. But white elites, fearing the rise of wealth in the Black community, devised a buffer system. Chinese immigrants, fresh from the railroad labor and barred from the white neighborhoods, were steered, sometimes legally and sometimes economically, into the Black communities. Secretly backed by white-owned banks and supply chains, these Chinese-owned businesses became the front lines of resource extraction through grocery stores, laundromats, restaurants, and liquor stores that captured the Black dollars and funneled profits out of the community where they would never be reinvested. The trick was Black entrepreneurs were systematically blocked from competing through racist lending policies, city zoning, and outright intimidation. Chinese shop owners, while themselves marginalized by whiteness, were granted enough foothold to operate above Black communities but still beneath the white economic institutions. They were allowed to open up stores but rarely owned the land. Their capital, the banking, the legal protections flowed through the white networks. Meanwhile, Black residents had no real local ownership of their own, no supply chains, no food sources, or even basic service. They were trapped in a constant consumer role, steadily bleeding out the wealth with every dollar spent. And a lot of that still goes on to this day. By the 1950s and 60s, the civil rights movement was a critical blow. The struggle against segregation was righteous, but integration had a devastating economic consequence. When Black customers could finally shop at white department stores, attend white schools, and work at white-collar jobs outside of their own communities, Black towns and Black-owned businesses were abandoned at scale. Young talent, doctors, teachers, lawyers left for white cities. And the Black dollars now funded white economies directly instead of circulating a few times inside the Black neighborhoods. Civil rights victories may have opened doors socially, but it closed the door economically on the
And that's why a lot of folks will argue that integration was a big mistake. It was a big mistake. It didn't really benefit us like we thought it would, so.
fragile independence of Black communities, and they had to fight to reconstruct that, which never really happened. This is what literally ended communities like Mound Bayou. In the end, the two-step maneuver was complete. First, use the Chinese and other non-Black immigrants to drain the growing Black economy under the Jim Crow. Then, once Black communities were weakened, finish the job with integration, siphoning the last drops of economic power into the white mainstream society. The tragedy is not that Black Americans sought freedom. The tragedy is that the form of freedom they were offered was the one that dismantled their own systems of ownership, entrepreneurship, self-sufficiency, while leaving them more economically vulnerable than ever. In other words, shit was better before the civil rights movement. The funny thing about this film touching on this is that Remick was actually trying to warn the brothers of this very thing. I noticed that Remick and Mary were very concerned after Annie was bitten, and Smoke kept his promise to end her before she turned. Remick's main target was Sammy. However, he also wanted to obtain the memories and abilities of the hoodoo practitioner, but Smoke kept his word and ended Annie before that could happen. When you saw Annie shaking the bones on the gambling table, she had foreseen her future demise and didn't want her knowledge being used by Remick. Moreover, getting Annie into the fold would be a huge advantage in persuading Smoke to join, who would be another huge asset with Smoke's tactical skills alongside his newly vampire brother, keeping the pillars of Joaquin and Boaz intact. Getting the twins, Annie and Sammy, would surely seal the deal. And speaking of deals, Remick carried 2 gold coins with him and only offered them to the whites in the film. At first, the house of Bert and Joan, and then again outside the juke joint with Mary. Smoke and Stack also carried 2 silver coins with them. Call me crazy, but almost every time we saw the coins, they were in like a Vesica Pisces symbol. In ancient times, coins were used symbolically and ritualistically to represent a deal, a pact, or a contract. In ancient Greece, coins were placed in the mouths of the dead to pay the ferryman for passage across the river Styx. This was a spiritual deal, a coin for passage. In Rome, coins were buried or offered in deals to God's favor, victory, or prosperity. In China, ancient cash coins were not only traded, but used for spiritual deals, rituals, protections, and offerings to the ancestors. Even in West Africa, cowrie shells often acted like coins, and they were used in consulting the spirits about a deal or a decision. And we see many deals being made on the film. Sammy even notes to his father about how he's worked all week and him going out to play music is the trade for his hard work. Stack negotiates with Delta Slim about his compensation for opening night. Smoke enlightens the young girl outside about negotiating her time and watching the truck. He also negotiates the prices with Lisa Chow. And Smoke even makes a deal with his brother to let Sammy live out his life. Hell, even Hogwood tries to negotiate before Smoke unloads the clip on him. And as the old saying goes, you don't get what you're worth, you get what you negotiate. There's so much we could continue to discuss, like the choice of names for several characters, namely Elijah and Elias, which are 2 versions of the same name. Something else I noticed at the church was that the choice to invert the triangle above the door. I can't really show you here because I don't have like any 4K visuals of it. But one moment the triangle was pointing up to the roof, and then inside the church, it changes. We could talk about the vultures that seem to show up everywhere and circle above as if they knew something were about to go down. We could talk about the Masonic symbolism with the songs about traveling, the twins being Joaquin and Boaz, Mary with the checkered pattern matching Sammy's poster in the background, even Cornbread being the Tyler at the door. We could talk about Stack coming in the room with that Biggie style Coogee sweater on and the 4-finger stack ring. Sammy living on to open up a club and name it Pearline. But we'll save some of this stuff for the conversation in the comment section. Anyway, let's give Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan, and this entire cast and crew their flowers. This film is an instant classic and a masterpiece. The cinematography, lighting, sound design, score, acting, symbolism, the storytelling, and the editing, all of that shit is top tier. The cinema experience itself watching on IMAX made it feel like you were right there in the juke joint at some times. The creativity and folklore behind this film sets it apart from any other project set in this time period. Hands down. I give this joint a 10 out of 10. Let me know what you thought about the film in the comments. And if you
Grand closing. Grand opening, grand closing.
Hey, yo, just because Smoke and Stack are running bootleg hooch down to Clarksville doesn't mean you should be watching the bootleg version of the film. So Lindy, hop your ass right on down to the theater and support the film. In my first Sinners video, I left a few things out, seeking to spark the conversation in the comment section, but there's so much in this film to speak about. Notice in my first video, I didn't refer to Sinners as a movie one time. I referred to it as a film intentionally because we use the word movie in everyday conversation, regardless of the quality and time put into the project. Using the term film for me isn't just a nod to the fact that Coogler actually chose to use film, but it also is a respect to his approach to the actual art form of filmmaking. This evening, we're going to talk about some of the notions at the end of my first video, reveal some of the amazing placement of ritual theater, hoodoo being everywhere in the film, and some esoteric moonshine sprinkled throughout a deeper meaning. Heavy gratitude to you all for watching. And if you're new to Real Enigmas and Theories, welcome. This video will contain spoilers for the film Sinners, so consider this a heads up. So let's pull out those magnifying glasses and cook. At the beginning, we see Sammy, and the film starts on Sunday morning, the day after everything that happened at the juke joint on Saturday, or Sabado, or Sabbath. We see a man on a wagon with a horse, and the horse seems to react to Sammy's presence. This happens later on with Smoke as well, and there's a hidden connection there that we'll pick up on later. We can see the fresh cuts on his left cheek from Remick. We see flashes of Remick as both of his parents speak to him, but mostly his father, Jedediah. Here's where we also learn the name of Sammy's mother, Ruth. We're going to talk about Ruth and Jedediah later on in the video. Their names are very important to some other connections we'll discuss later. Now, I addressed the notion of deals, bargains, and pacts spread throughout the film in my first video. Smoke teaches the young girl how to negotiate. Stack negotiates with Delta Slim. Smoke makes a deal with his twin for Sammy's chance of living his life out. And there are a bunch of other deals and pacts that are made throughout the film. But here we have a preacher proposing a pact to his son. He asks Sammy to swear in front of his congregation that he would leave those sinning ways where they lie. He didn't say where they lay, but he said where they lie. And earlier, Sammy can be seen using the lye soap when his mother was washing clothes. Lye is also used in hoodoo rituals. Lye soap was used to wash away spiritual filth, not just dirt, but curses, bad luck, hexes, and ward off enemies. People would wash their hands, bodies, or even their floors and doorways with homemade lye soap as a ritual for spiritual purification. In some cases, it was combined with herbs like hyssop, blessed salt, or Florida water to amplify the cleansing effect. And the movie made a point to show this, and we also hear Sammy's mother saying that the lye soap would dry you out. Another hoodoo practice I noticed was Sammy keeping his intentions and tools of his expression under his bed. Some people call this bed work. Sammy feels under his bed for his guitar, which his father had taken to the church as a bargaining tool. He tells Sammy, yeah, I brought it in here, but I'm trying to get you to help me do my sermon for tomorrow. And that's when he has him read a passage from Corinthians. He sets the guitar by the communion table that says, in remembrance of me, which is a reference to the Eucharist. Then we see the father trying to make a pact with Sammy with his congregation dressed in all white, which is also a nod to Ifa, Voodoo, Haitian Voodoo, and others. The way they threw these African spiritual systems in there was stellar. Sammy took notice that his father was offering something similar to what Remick had to offer. And this is why we see the flashes of Remick mirroring Sammy's parents as they spoke. Sammy's father had his congregation, and Remick had made his congregation out of the people that went to the juke joint. Ruth takes notice to the cuts on Sammy's face that we later see left prominent scars that were even displayed on the artwork at his club. I think this may be a nod to ancient African scarification rituals of tribal markings. Now, these tribal markings have multiple purposes and reasons depending on where and when you're from. Marks often identify tribe, clan, or family affiliation, like a passport.
That's the only thing about the movie I wasn't really feeling. Everything was just taken back to some type of African acknowledgement, and that's fine if that's what he want to do, you know, but I wasn't feeling it because most of our history and everything is rooted right here in America. And to think that some of our people would know of these African hoodoo type of things is kind of interesting to me, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I agree with that at all. So keep that in mind, family. Like, I'm not gonna let this one play for too long because I want to open up the panel for people to give their views on the movie if you want to, and all that. So,
In traditional society, scarification ceremonies may signify adulthood, warrior status, or marriage readiness. They also have a spiritual and protective meaning. These marks can be protective charms invoking ancestral spirits or deities. And some scars even act as a medicine believed to carry healing or magical properties. We saw some of this same scarification symbolism with Jordan and Coogler in Black Panther as well with Killmonger. In many African cosmologies, the skin is not just flesh, it's a spiritual console between the seen and unseen worlds. And scarification turns the body into a kind of spiritual armor. The scars placed on the temples, forehead, or cheeks were believed to guard against evil spirits or malevolent forces. In regions like the Yoruba kingdoms, certain patterns correspond to Orisha worship, like Ogun for war.
all right, he going too much into the African talk for me. Okay. So I'm gonna play a little song and then I'm gonna throw the link in the chat. If anybody wants to come up and give their views on Sinners, what they took away from it, how they felt about it, how it made them feel personally or whatever, you know, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So give me 1 second.
Who they think they better than? Ain't no comparison to the so-called black or African American. You can drop the African, keep the American. When we say Aborigine, it make their world in. I'm going in the same dirt my ancestors buried in. I come from a god and a goddess, so what that make me? Not even Basquiat can trace me. Not even Van Gogh can paint me. The MC in me is the God MC, equals the God in me. I'm focused in, let my mind be free. You too blind to see. The Jews I give is real, it's been real. These ain't shots, they missiles. All you gonna hear is the whistle. Lyrically, this an execution. My verses start revolutions from my people seeking restitution. Since the beginning, fuck evolution. Or maybe my reality is all a dream. I put it together like I was sowing seeds. So it seems this is that audio dopamine. Go against the machine. We put you where nobody can hear you scream. And sing you to meet your Elohim. My nigga, this is savage mode. It's something that you can't go. It started with a spark and I'ma let it explode. I was given the cheat codes that'll let me dump and reload and go through them waves like a fucking torpedo. You dealt the cards of life. I just cut them diamonds with the ace of spades. Y'all scatter like roaches when they facing raid, or vampires when they facing blade. I'm trying to get next to Shireen like I'm getting played. You still stuck as a mental slave. You still stuck in that mental cage. While I'm making easy money, pipping holes in style. This my coming to age. Crowd roaring when I'm coming on stage. And when I'm done, they gonna be cheering my name. Drake Cobbs and nah, I ain't quit my day job. I spit bars. I really rap on my day off. That's real shit. Just give you some tools you can build with. Aim high even if you still miss. Just keep going. It's a climb to the top. And I'ma keep flowing. Down Lake Shore, I'm Chicagoan. Yeah. You niggas is playing checkers, we playing chess. And nigga, this is checkmate. Dre be the big dog and you just a little bait. You out of Africa and we ain't got the same traits. I'm a God being and we ain't got the same fate. My granny died February 18th and I was born on the same date. The chosen one, the ancestors' chosen son. They gave me the golden gun. One shot, that's a hole in one. From the pyramid of the sun, the poverty point. I don't think you niggas is getting the point. We still here. Who said they made the Aboriginals disappear? Your information's lagging in the rear. All you do is teach fear. We copper colored with woolly hair. Am I speaking clear? So fuck the nonsense. When I rap, I touch your consciousness. From within is where you get your self-confidence. Let's bring it back to dominance. Ain't no confining us. We'll bring that wild Indian out of us. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, it's your hostess with the most, just holding that fire like a roach clip, Cosmon Cal, man. Just sharing the live. My sister Sharice going live on her channel. She's breaking down the Sinners movie. I watched it this weekend. I actually thought it was pretty good. You dig what I'm saying? For everybody who ain't seen it, man, make sure you go out there and watch that, man. But let's get back to this real quick. You dig what I'm saying?
Those two videos in particular, because I had listened to them. I don't know if I shared them with you. I wasn't trying to give you a spoiler at the time, but you have gone to see the movie now.
Oh,
And so let me lay something down for you to consider, and everybody else who comes up and gives their 2 cents. I agree with much of the commentary in the chat. Being an Aboriginal, either YouTube or actual community, those who are the autochthonous people of this land, we're going to feel some kind of way of keeping the attempt to stamp us made in Africa. Now, you know, we can go back and forth on that and how there are others amongst us in our immediate family and our relations and interactions who are stuck in this Black African American paradigm. However, I shared that in the chat, the statement of Elijah and Elias. Now, depending on how, you know, Bible thumping you are, or how you were brought up and reared as your childhood with your parents or with your grandparents, and if you were lucky to be with your great grandparents, Elias is supposedly, I believe, the Greek transliteration of Elijah. But Elias is supposed to transfer into mean the word of God, and Elijah is referred to as the hand of God. So now, if we want to use those examples as a motif, the word of God will be the slick talking Stack. You know, some would even characterize him as the pimp, you know, the pimptaculous, smooth talking salesman. Whereas the hand of God, you already saw Smoke dropped Smoke. He shot one nigga in the ass and another one he kneecapped. Right?
Yep.
Okay. So the hand of God was laid down, particularly in that climactic scene, looking down the barrel of the Tommy gun and taking out all the KKK. Right? So that was Elias was Stack, Elijah was Smoke. You feel me? Someone else wants to come up and they can, you know, fill it out with their perspective. But I just wanted to lay that out for the context of what we're talking about. Now, Stack, if you notice, it was easier to differentiate the twins because Stack was almost always smiling that toothy grin.
Yes.
And Smoke was always looking sullen.
Mm-hmm.
You know? There's also the belief that when you're dealing with especially identical twins, there's a strength of one particular twin that the other one kind of allows it to be on display. So since Stack did a lot of the talking, Smoke just did a lot of the backing it up.
That's right.
Do you remember the scene where in the very beginning, early on, Stack would roll the cigarettes and you really didn't think about it till the end, Smoke hand shook so bad he couldn't roll the final cigarette. And Stack would roll it, then light it, and the brothers would, you know, puff, puff, pass, pass. You feel me?
But I noticed that he always passed it to his brother first, though. He never hit it first. He rolled it up, he lit it, but he passed it right to his brother. And his brother hit it first.
Now let's not forget that they are World War I veterans.
Mm-hmm.
That is between 1916 and let's just round it about 1919, which would lead us into the Red Summer, right?
Mm-hmm.
They also allegedly were the moonshiners, backup bodyguard, strong arms, if you will, of the great Alphonse Capone, who, what does this criminal in the White House love to keep name dropping?
Oh Lord.
Yeah, you know, I mean the gangster wannabe. Let me not climb up on Trump's ass too much, you know. But
I know
just to say, well, see, my stepfather was a full-blood Blackfoot bootlegger from Chattanooga, Tennessee. But
Oh, wow.
you know, when we're talking about the whole manner of the juke joint itself,
Mm-hmm.
the camaraderie and community that comes from Saturday night stomping. He said, "Sweat till you stink." Remember when he said that out there at the train station? Sweat till you stink. Is that the same people on the floor in the juke joint, the same congregation Sunday morning? It's not the same musicians allegedly playing the devil's music on Saturday night, the musicians in the congregation on Sunday morning. Is it what? And I'm gonna pause here for someone else want to jump on this and slap it, flip it, rub it down. But what is sacred and what is profane?
You know, I felt like maybe they weren't the same people because most of the people who was at the juke joint got turned into vampires, right? So they wouldn't.
The belief is the setup was, were they okay, I'm not want to say foreigners. Were they travelers that wound up at the train station, or were they members of the community that met people at the train station? That happened to be the focal point where Stack knew he could draw traffic.
Mm-hmm.
You feel me? That's the first occurrence of him interacting Delta Slim, Delroy Lindo's character, was at the train station. Remember, the first thing he did was to admonish Sammy, this is my turf.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you come up in here with that that juju music and that guitar stepping in my space, because that's where he was plying his wares, playing the harmonica, right?
Mm-hmm.
But who is the population moving through the train station? The locals or travelers or both?
Or both. I would say both.
Now, presumably, we already know Pearline was she a loose woman? She's married.
You funny.
Was I'm just asking. I've heard this in different commentaries on videos. Was she the Jezebel? She certainly wasn't a working girl, you know, you call it the street woman, right? And Mary, is that not the tragic mulatto just laid all out there on display?
Oh, that shit was tragic. I was cracking up. He said, "You get the fuck up on out of here."
And then did she not blame Stack for having her marry the white husband?
Yep. They gotta push.
Did she not try to leverage a Negro on her mother being the midwife and I guess the caretaker, the nanny, the babysitter?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the interesting point that he brought up, I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch it. I don't remember hearing in the movie that Stack, the second twin coming out, caused a breech birth that ended up taking the life of his mother. Now, if that is true, it's an interesting take. And Smoke killing the father to protect the abuse that was heaped on Stack, the younger twin.
Yeah, that's in the movie for sure. Because what's her face? Girl, the half black girl, Mary. Yeah, she pretty much was telling that story to.
But she actually was what you would call an octoroon. Her grandpappy was half black. But go ahead, sis.
Yeah, I think she was in the bar kind of explaining that to Sammy, you know, telling him about how, you know, that her mother practically what she did, saved their lives, you know. So
Yeah, as a doula, as a midwife, as a what you call that, a herbalist woman,
said he was breached. She said that.
and
So
and wasn't Annie a doula essentially? Or are we just going to see her as hoodoo or voodoo? You know, that's another thing that really is not addressed here. She's
yeah,
a hoodoo practitioner, but then they want to turn around and call her a voodoo woman. Now, isn't that not derogatory? It's not voodoo like calling you the N word?
absolutely. I would say so. I mean, I didn't like none of the African nuances at all. I was just over it. I was over it because I didn't understand how they would get that type of knowledge. Yes, books and things were available, but I mean, come on now. Like, no, I
We
don't.
need to start and allowing this type of thing of like the griot
Mm-hmm.
as a term. And what's a more either Aboriginal or American Indian title other than storyteller? Because again, I guess we'll have to start researching what our original tongue was
Mm-hmm.
and who that person was referred to. I think it could be shaman.
Uh-huh.
They've had the nerve to call them witch doctors. These are all pejorative terms describing us externally. What did we call ourselves?
Oops. And that's the main thing. That's what's lost in translation. And I think that it's just automatically being brought back to these African ideals or whatever due to the quote transatlantic slave trade narrative. And it's just they're gonna always take it back there, which I don't understand why they're taking it back there with no real proof.
Well,
And
see, again, once you have told a tale, notice that the greatest story ever told is the life, death, burial, and resurrection of so-called Jesus the Christ. It is still a story. You feel me? and what a big mama usually have to say about people who tell tales. You're a lie and the truth ain't in you.
scratch a lie, find the thief.
Okay, let's circle back to the title of the movie. It is an instant classic. I will give that young brother that. You know, regardless of his, continuously to weave Pan-Africanism into the thing, which is, it's problematic and has to be extracted. But what of the concept of sinners itself? The title of the movie, what strikes you immediately, if not Christian motif? The Catholic Church, sinner is what?
Shit, I guess. I mean, shit, what is a sinner? I mean,
Well, in Catholic belief, even babies are born in sin. This whole original sin thing, which is where you'd have to start with breaking this down. What's the original sin?
It's sad that they would think that birth or being born into the world makes you a sinner. You ain't done shit.
Well, okay, let's deal with this mythology again. These are all tales. It comes from this book called the Holy Bible. Eve issuing forth, which is what you women have to contend with every month. The bloodletting, the issuing forth of that, which actually is the creating force of life, the placenta, the uterus, the womb itself, the lining of the womb is being on a what? Isn't it not timed with the lunar cycle typically?
Okay, talk about it.
Women, once they're put, especially in the military, they find themselves cycling in sync, do they not? Have you experienced that ever before? Are you aware of that?
You said being in sync with what?
With each other. Any women that are grouped together, they find themselves cycling in sync.
For sure, definitely. I mean, obviously, I have a twin sister, and then my stepmom lived in the house too. And I mean, I would say more so when I was younger. A lot of because we were all together. It would happen together. Yeah, for sure.
So they will tell you that Eve was punished to issue forth each month. You feel?
Mm-hmm.
And the blood itself, the blood offered up, is where we're all born in sin. Again, I'm just pitching. I don't subscribe to nonsense. I believe it's actual. This we're talking about people telling things to children
Yeah,
and adults then keeping a childlike mentality. Okay, but it's extremely powerful, isn't it?
for sure.
And how are women made to feel as dirty? Certainly not having sex on your period. The other thing, for example, is what you look at in scripture. Miriam was struck. That's the sister of Moses. Moses and Miriam were turned into white things, white people. In the case of Moses, only his hand, because it supposedly put it inside his chest. I don't know if you believe metaphysically, he physically put his hand inside his body, pulled it out, it turned white. But explain to me why Miriam was struck from head to toe. From the top of her head to the soles of the feet, she was stricken white and also banished from the encampment for 7 days until considered cleansed. You're aware of that scriptural reference?
Yeah, I think that oftentimes the Bible sees. I don't like religious talk, but for the sake of the conversation, I don't.
No, the point I'm bringing up is a metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
So the point I'm saying is that the woman, the motif, the mystique of femininity is being painted in an evil fashion. It's being said to be. Go ahead, cook on that.
No, that's what I was going to say, is that the Bible is always, or just any story of the sort, is always making women out to be negative or being looked at in a bad light. Always, like you said.
So you got the temptress, you got the Jezebel, you got the sirens in mythology.
A lot of damn credit sometimes, because some people don't believe Mary was a virgin. I mean, sheesh. It's just awful. I think that even down to Adam and Eve eating the apple, and she's the reason why the world's all fucked up. And
well, hold on, that's one shoe dropping. Lilith preceded her. You know the story of Lilith.
Go ahead, Ali.
Lilith was the one that was wild and out of control. Eve was supposedly submissive. You feel me?
Yeah.
But go ahead. You know what I'm saying? The point of the menstruation, the issuing forth of blood, the bloodletting itself is being considered evil. And so all people are issued forth through the womb, right? You're piercing the veil. That's your water breaking. Mm-hmm. So you're leaving the amniotic fluid and then causing blood in birth. Because how many women have known notoriously to die, as supposedly is the motif of this story, died in childbirth, which would be bleeding out, correct?
For sure. That's a lot to think about and take in. For sure. I mean, especially when we think about, just in my opinion only, how women are almost villainized or, like I said, just made to look like we are the ones at fault. And I think the Bible also, in a way, indirectly blames women as well. So on that note, hey, OTK. Okay, no OTK yet. So anyway, Alabama, go ahead.
That's South Kakalaki, smacky backy. Come on, bro. Before I go into a hunky hole out there in the boondocks. The other thing about sinners is, again, remember, this is primarily a Christian motif. They're really, do we even consider Islam or Judaism? The vampire itself as he put his spin on it, I would agree with some of what he's saying about the Irish Catholic oppression and domination
Mhm.
of the Church of England. Because, see, people don't understand, the Protestants were trying to exterminate the Irish Catholic. That's where St. Patty and driving the snakes out for you St. Patty Day fools wearing the green. You feel me, sis?
Mhm. Yeah, I
Who are
never.
they driving out? The melanated or the pale Irish?
Exactly. Probably them pale. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's more so the pale Irish for sure. I mean, I know it was some black Irish around, but the pale Irish were the ones that I think that they were more specific about, that were being brought over here, being brought to different places, and ultimately were slaves. So yeah, it's just I thought it was a good movie overall, you know, like minus the mongoloid Shata and the constant need to connect us to African culture. You know, overall, it was a good movie. And I do like the time period it was set in. It was a really nice, because like I was saying earlier when I opened up the show, that it definitely came off as more of a time period piece, and then it started to go into the vampire situation. And you know, I mean, it was good how they did it. I did really enjoy it overall. I did like the time period that it was set in. All of that, I think it was good. You know, and I hope that we all were able to take something away from it. OTK, I don't know how you, there you go. Lord, what a mess. We can't hear you. You on mute.
What's good?
Hey OTK, how are you?
Huh?
How are you?
I'm good, man. Just came out to grab me something to eat before I get back to the spot with the computer.
Okay, cool. I wanted to see, since you hit the panel or whatever, do you have any opinion centers or anything that stuck out to you in the movie?
Oh yeah. From the very beginning, when they was like, "Yo," and they was like bringing like all these different things, all these different people that has the same type of story. Like when they was like, fuck, the Choctaw got it. Somebody else got it, and they was talking about somebody who can play music that can touch people's soul or whatever. So if you notice, the whole thing was about that blues guitar player. When the old man said, "Look, before they get to you, they gotta go through me." He was something special. So it was definitely a spiritual movie, biblical inclined, definitely. Um, like some revelations type stuff to me. But yeah, definitely overall a good movie. Definitely a good movie, sis. But it was another part of the movie. You seen the movie, right, sis? Alright, so not a spoiler, but it was a part in the movie when the dude was burning and he ran up to the house, right? And they opened the door and he was burning. He was like, oh man, the Indians, they hunt me and all this, right? Remember that? I guess that's the part where you're saying where they portrayed them as Asians. But when he said that, right? You hear what the dude that said in the door? He said, "Hey, you sure you just ain't talking about some different complexion type motherfucker?"
Yeah, he said fair skinned niggas.
Yeah, you're right, right, right. I caught that, and then they, you know what I mean. So they pulled up in the truck and all that, and then that gave us like who was chasing them, but that was crazy though. But go ahead, sis.
I do wish they would have. I don't know. I mean, I guess when you don't have that history on who we truly are in America, I guess it's hard to really portray it on film. And I know a lot of times it probably would have been a whole backlash around, you know, portraying the Choctaws as black. or so-called black, which they really were and is now. But you know, that's why some things just got to be straightened up. You know, so the
But
misrepresentation.
see, they will tell you you're. The interesting thing is that you're dealing with whitewash, but they would imply that you blackening something up. But white paint covers over other things of color, right? So
Uh-oh.
we're peeling back the white veneer, which is the lie. But the people who are clinging to it, they're the white paint. So all these pale virgins, I don't care who they are, the imposters on the reservation, the $5 frauds, who are all Europeans, right? Primarily, you see they're Eastern European, whether they're Zionist small hats or the Polish. Have you seen, and I think I asked you this before, OTK, did he drop? Like he dropped.
Yeah.
Um, do you know in Canada, pretendians is the title of a crime, not a pejorative slur to be thrown around as it is by Umar Johnson and Tariq Nasheed and other pan goofy fools. You know, they call themselves wanting to target us who are finding our facts. These are facts. That you were not lucky enough to have your ancestors tell you that. For you to come in it on your own accord, you're being bombarded by liars and lies. You feel me? That's the white veneer. And all of that is to prop whiteness and those who call themselves white people, is to continue to prop them up with what authority?
Mm. Exactly. The authority that we gave them. Unfortunately, the things that we've allowed to take place since the beginning of the time, shit, before we was born. I think this was allowed, and that's a good point that you brought up in Canada, because I always tell people about when I went into the Canadian smoke shop.
Just gotta keep it real with my people. If you already talking about black and white, you already been duped. You did what I'm talking about. So you, instead of trying to point the finger at somebody else, is now imperative upon you to shake your own indoctrination. You did what I'm talking about. You know, for everybody who heavily racist and prejudiced. Now, you know, I ain't talking to nobody in particular, but if you are, I'm talking to you specifically. But you did what I'm talking about. If you fell into the black, and the white, the white man. If you fall into that trap, man, you're already defeated. So don't, you know, take it all with a grain of salt, y'all. Take it all with a grain of salt. It's a movie.
That are worldwide known, and just tobacco industry alone utilizes us, not them. Now, this is for centuries before all of a sudden Hollyweird gave us this Tonto shit, or the single teardrop. Remember on environmental pollution and the crying Indian? Both of that nigga's parents is 100% Sicilian.
Right. But now what? What you gonna do about it?
See?
These are facts. But as I was saying earlier about the pretendian title or claim of crime, you familiar with the Native American princess? They want to call her American Indian now. Buffy St. Clair on Sesame Street, who perpetuated the fraud for 60 years?
Yeah.
They letting her do the same thing that bitch did over Emmett Till. Let her die a peaceful existence, while having perpetuated one of the biggest lies in the interaction between people considered oppressed, dominated, and colonialized, while these squatting motherfuckers have literally taken our identity, rubbing it in our face, claiming to have a black abuela. Don't you notice that each of these bastards reach back for a black grandma? They don't mention grandpa. Why do you think they always suggest they have a black woman? in their bloodline. Like Pocahontas was stretched over the entire House of Burgess in Virginia when Walter Ashby Plecker put the Racial Integrity Act into law in 1924. Did you know that part of the story? He simultaneously bestowed a one-drop rule on these white bastards in the state house
You
to
said
all
the,
have descended from Pocahontas.
you said the Virginia
The
House
house,
of Burgesses?
that's what it's referred to. It's still
Yeah,
referred to today as the House of Burgess. Yeah,
I'm here. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And make one, make some.
But they go and try to make a nigga in our wood pile make us African.
Yep.
But one drop of American blood makes them an Indian. Make
Which was
that make sense.
easy. It
Make
does
that
definitely.
make sense. So I would suggest the ultimate sinner is a person perpetuating this lie.
Mm-hmm. And been doing it for so damn long. And we haven't done anything remotely close to fix it outside of accepting. So yeah, it's crazy.
What did none of your business say? Fake ass pretender. What she say about the imposter chasing the triple double imposter? Wait,
She's talking
I'm
about
confused.
the chantage chasing the Irish. I mean, let me know if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out because I was scrolling till she says, "Okay, boom." Those other scam natives and fake Irish didn't work, so they had to turn to KKK and supernatural hates.
Yeah.
Nanya, come on, hit the link. Come mix it up, sis. Because I'm here out on the edges of the twilight zone, man, and the hunky hole might snatch my black ass. I see OTK drop though, but that's an interesting thing she said. She said her auntie always told us we were Indians, and she even named her son Indio. You know, those who did not have the honor and the privilege to speak with, if you go past your grandparents and they were alive and you didn't mix it up with them and didn't take out a set recorder or a video camera, shame on you. You know, shame on you. Their stories are in the great void, but I still suggest literally locked in your ancestral DNA. Stop with the spit in the cup bullshit, the spit in the tube. These crackers got you flipped upside down, inside out. Oh, you see the other thing she said, Sharice? It has uplifting moments full of gems. Drop, aka disclosure. Go ahead on, Nanya.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what was so crazy about it. That's what's so crazy about it. And that's why I was saying, like, all this stuff going on in this movie. Like, I was trying not to get upset, but at the same time, still trying to enjoy it because, obviously, it's great to see our people on film this way. But at the same time, you ain't gotta keep on taking us back to Africa, man. Them folks ain't
Remember, when I asked you again after your interview, and I'm going to have to go back if I get dropped off, I'm going to have to go back and review Professor Eltis. When he said in the 1870 census, as best he could determine from his data he collected, only 2% of what we're being called the black population or the quote unquote African American was born on the African continent. That means 98% of us to this moment in 2025 are clueless. I'd hate to say that we're barely in the 1 to 5%, but what's up, Cosmon? Cosmological.
Man, peace to my OG Alabama, man. Salute my sister, man. Thank y'all for having me, man. What y'all got going on?
Why don't you start with Sinners, the title of the movie? Slap it, flip it, rub it down.
Okay. The title Sinners at first it kind of threw me off. And you know, I'm still rummaging through it. I watched it this weekend, and I thought it's an instant classic, but it has some issues and problems with it for the Aboriginal community. But that it was fantastic, tying the multicultural things, you know, together in one kind of little blend. But it was a little off, but it could have been a little better.
I was breaking down with Sis on what is defined as sin, the original sin, and what is a sinner.
To my understanding, anybody who goes against, you know, their highest idea of the self, you did what I'm talking about, and it hurts another person, takes away from another person or themselves, is in effect sin. You did what I'm saying. So, like, if you gave yourself poison and you got sick because of it, the proof that you did wrong is that you did. So that would, in a sense, be sin naturally. But I wanted to. It was a hidden Easter egg in there that I thought was really the highlight of the whole movie. You dig what I'm talking about? And that's when the guy Remick, the vampire dude, says that he brought his people came over here, and that they end up dying all on this boat. Well, there is a time in a where you know, a boat from coming over there came over here, and by the time they got here, everybody on it was dead.
Now, you talking about the ghost ship? There was an article they showed from a newspaper talking about 1911.
Yeah, but
I think it was in Boston Harbor or something like that.
Yeah, but there's also another time, 1848. Right? The dope part that I found interesting to me was that in 1848, what's your boy name? Ferdinand and them start kicking people out of Germany. And a whole bunch of these people was niggas who got brought over here to the Americas and implemented into them in the American system. You dig what I'm talking about? In 1848, they're called the 48ers. Everybody heard of the 49ers. You dig what I'm talking about? But what about them niggas and the mix, them bastards of the Rhineland who was being shipped here in 1848? So when Dog tied that in, it's one that happens in 1848 with off a ship coming from Germany. Not even Ireland. And then we know a lot of that Ireland stuff tied down into the islands. Them is niggas too, coming from Ireland, Scotland. Don't get it twisted. All them people that go down there, they just black Europeans. But Jacobites and other things, whether the Huguenots and whatnot, Scottish, Highland Scots, they all niggas. So they shoot them on down into the Caribbean, indenture, enslaved, whatever. You did what I'm talking about. And the story get mumbo. But I thought it was dope that it was some people came over here in 48 and they weren't what you actually thought they were. It just say German, right? But when you look at the people, they niggas running away from oppression. You did what I'm talking about. And the government at the time is subsidizing these niggas move up out of there. They're oppressing them over there, but subsidizing they move to the Americas. You did what I'm saying? So that's 1848. It was a little nugget in there. I found it in you dig what I'm saying? Y'all check that out. Check out the 48ers. You know what I mean? But other than that, dope movie. I hated the whole that they had to tie to the griot. You dig what I'm talking about? I hate that they had to tie it to the griot.
Did you? Okay, since you brought that up, Cosmo, what was your take on that Firefly thing? You know they called them wrong Choctaw, the Choctaw. But what say you about that? The Firefly motif. and the so-called
that's
storytelling.
what I heard. That's what it says in the stories. The ancient stories say the many of the fireflies, the light that is in the fireflies is representative of your ancient ancestors. That's what the stories say. But I noticed that in the movie when Dog went out to go pee and he was standing there and all the fireflies, but then you had two eyes. They looked like fireflies, but they was eyes. They was looking at my man. You dig what I'm saying? So I thought it was an odd combination though. The timing, the theme with the African and the spirituality with the blues, it reeks of the Robert Johnson story.
Yeah, you notice they kept dragging that and the selling the soul at the crossroads. See, this crossroads motif is to keep pushing the cross and the crucifixion. While the mythology, we keep letting to these bastards whitewash us and lie about a white man on a cross, but niggas' bodies hanging from trees, right?
Strange fruit. So, my thing is, I can't cry about it. My thing is when you gonna make your own movies with the niggas as the Indians. Because when Jay-Z did it, he made the niggas Indians. The Indians is the niggas. So, and we love that movie when they was out west. I'm forgetting the name of it right now. You dig what I'm saying? But when they made all them Cherokeeville and all them, they was niggas. All that, because that's how it really was. They was Indians. The Indians is niggas. Niggas is Indians. So you dig on. I don't think we can cry about it no more. You just got to make your own. You dig what I'm saying? And pump this narrative. So, because this narrative is even more fantastic, but more informative than the so-called African narrative, right? So, if you told the real story, it's more fantastic and more impactful than the myth or the fairy tale, and it's even more stranger because it is truth. So I'm just saying we just got to get the people who willing to do it to tell the right story. Michael B. Jordan may not know. Michael B. Jordan may be African. He could have came straight off one of them Windrush type deals to America, and his people was some of that. Ain't no telling. But if ain't no telling, it ain't no way you can tell me if he didn't know that he wouldn't make that type of movie. Right? If he did know,
Mic check. Can you hear me? Because I think I'm on the borders of the hunky hole again. I probably get snapped. I heard you say something about Michael B. Jordan. Did you know his production company is about to do a 3-part series on The Greatest? On Muhammad Ali's story?
Muhammad?
Yeah. There's a couple of interviews you might want to check out. I've tried to free flowing with a lot of these reviews that have hit, but some of this was out like almost a year ago. Mm-hmm. But it just hasn't hit because of the release of the movie. So now you know how the internet do. But there was an interview with him and Ryan Coogler where, and big ups to both of these young brothers because Ryan Coogler is barely 40. Yeah, but he is helping him put forth his production company, and he directed Creed 3. Michael B. Jordan
did. He just did Sinners. Ryan Coogler did Sinners.
No. Hear what I'm saying. I'm talking about Michael B. Jordan is being supported by Ryan to put forward his production company. And one of his projects was he did Creed 3 as well as directed it.
Right.
I'm talking about Michael B. Jordan.
That's his boy. You dig what I'm talking about? And
but this is what we should be seeing. Well, you and I, we're talking about it, so we're focusing on it. But I'm saying, as a people, we're falling down on understanding that's how the hell it's supposed to be. This shouldn't be a
No,
one-off. This
no,
shouldn't
I
be
don't.
a no, I'm talking about the supporting of each other. Now, the storytelling has to be adjusted. We do know they're not fully, clearly understand. And then, like you said, there are some who may be continental Africans, who may be tethers, as Tariq Nasheed calls it. I'm not knocking them. I'm saying we're not going to allow you to keep whitewashing, and pun intended, whitewashing the American known as the Negro, trying to bully us, intimidate us into being Pan-African. You feel me?
Yeah, no,
So
I totally understand. You dig what I'm saying? But we done about it, and it's time to just go make your. It's time to just go make your own. You know what I mean? Finally, if somebody believe you, if you tell them, you dig what I'm talking about. You got to remember, this is all new to most people. They've never even thought to think, why is somebody telling my story? Never even thought to think about it. You dig what I'm talking about? And never even thought to question it, ever. So we gotta always remember that this information is new to me. You dig what I'm talking about? Just because it's old to us, it's new to them. You dig what I'm talking about? And we don't never know who we gonna reach. You know? So I just loot in of dropping the seed, giving the knowledge, and if it grow, it grow. If it don't, it don't. But in the meantime, I'm going that way because you know there's no need in being stagnant, and ain't no telling somebody else ahead of me already ain't ready to tell it and I got my own, ain't no telling I could get my own Ryan Coogler. You see what I'm saying? If he knew. What if Ryan Coogler doesn't know? What if he think that African stuff is for real?
if I had the ability of putting him and Dan Calloway in a room and being a moderator, like an interviewer between the two, and show the connectivity generation to generation, because we've fallen down on that too. We're not passing generation to generation. We're not, showing the errors of our ways. I'm talking specifically about the boomer generation and how it's easy for us to be bashed upon. But the simple fact of the matter, you wouldn't be here if the boomer generation didn't survive. Let alone the thriving we've done is even when we were deceived by the argument of integration versus segregation. We did it with the goodness of heart and the intentions of our children and our grandchildren benefiting at our expense. It didn't quite happen the way that we may have thought or were told by our parents. Some would call it the silent generation, which was in the midst of World War II. But the ones that came home from World War I, where were we in the roaring 20s? We've chopped this up before, Cosmo. For me, the roaring 20s are these white demons set upon us through hundreds of our communities being bombed, burned, and pillaged. The most famous being because they documented it in film. Who shows up with a camera in the silent era for 2 days without a plan? Make that make sense, Cosmo.
Well, sounds like to me it was a plan. They knew exactly what they were going to watch because they knew exactly when it was going to happen. You ever thought, how did they know to be just far away enough to actually get the picture but not get the blast?
See the firebombing from the air. Knowing the bodies for over 2 days. This is May 31st, June 1st, 1921, in case you're slow on the short bus, on the uptake. Now, mentioning Annie for a moment, did you ever check out Lovecraft Country, my good brother? If you haven't,
yeah, I did.
go check it out. Do you remember her character in Lovecraft? Yeah. Ruby the blues singer? Yeah. You remember that? Uh-huh. How about you, Sharice? Have you had a chance to be exposed to Lovecraft Country? And there is an episode where they wove Tulsa in that too.
Well, people gotta also remember that the Red Summer was not just one summer. It was 1919, 1920, 1921, and into 22 and 23.
Yo, my point is the Roaring '20s, the bullshit we were taught, like the Great Gatsby's, Prohibition, and alcohol and shit. That's not what the Roaring '20s was. The Roaring '20s was these demonic, pale, degenerate foreign aliens turned loose in our hundreds, if not thousands, of our communities. But check the dope part, though, bro. That W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington may have been the house niggas that was going around identifying Negro Wall Street. You hip to that conspiratorial story?
Yeah, I'm already there. You got to think about it. It wasn't until really into the 1800s in the removal of the indigenous tribes east of the Mississippi. You dig what I'm talking about? This after the war, mid 1800s. They start even really moving past the Allegheny Mountains. You dig what I'm talking about? It wasn't like, and when they went somewhere, they went posseed up with the army, with everybody. You dig what I'm talking about? It wasn't a free and clear shot. You know, so a lot of people got caught up in a lot of things. You dig what I'm talking about? I don't.
Yeah, that what you're referring to is what was told to be Manifest Destiny, Go West, Young Man, and this ongoing criminal enterprise of expansion. You feel me?
No doubt, but what I'm saying is this is government backed. You know what I mean? The government did this. These are strategic striking plans, blowing of dams, releasing of levees, advantage of certain natural disasters, or into my understanding, creating them.
That's getting into systematic organization, which you already know. At that level, it's county, municipality, state, and Uncle Sam
It's
in the
federal.
background. Yep, in the back.
You
Well,
gotta
they're
remember
in
this
the
stuff is
background
all-
coordinated. Remember, those planes were decommissioned from World War II stock and handed over, quote unquote, to private citizens. I'm talking specifically now with Tulsa and Greenwood. Okay, those Gatling guns, those 50 caliber, was put on the back of trucks and was on railroad cars. You know that was transmitted and underwritten by the federal government, Uncle Sam. You know that, bro. Because this was being decommissioned from World War I.
My thing is they didn't have Gatling guns since the 1800s. So my thing is, where do you get the train tracks from? Where do you make a train at? Out of what? You ain't got one over there. I was looking at some old film, right? And sometimes Alabama, I think they don't even know they tell on themselves. It was some old film from, if I'm not mistaken, the 1880s, 1890s, early 1900s, where they were building the so-called railroads. And what I noticed was they weren't leveling ground and laying railroads. They were pulling railroads already up out of the ground and replacing the old ones on new level ground. The tracks were already there. So I think
a lot of what people call this high rate society, you dig what I'm talking about? They placed it thousands and thousands of years ago. I don't think it was thousands of years ago. Few hundred, maybe 6 from our current date, 1400s. And we got to remember, they had to come over here. They had to come over here in the 1400s. Had to. Anybody take into effect what was going on, the climate-wise, in the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, all the way to 1850? Anybody know what was going on over in Europe? They were in a mini ice age. They were in a mini ice age. They had to come here.
So, okay, so I get you now. You're saying climate as weather, not the environment of what was happening. Intermingling of these foreign people, these alien cultures, these foreigners being dropped on our doorstep because we were in constant combat.
Don't mean white. Foreigner don't mean
Well,
white.
no, you notice.
You dig what I'm saying? Foreigner don't mean necessarily white skin. That's what we got to get past. Because that's where the dupe come in. Because niggas who was looking like you was signing shit in your name. Oh, that's my uncle. And you dig what I'm talking about? I'm the center of Whoopty. Yeah, let me sign this land over to the United States. I can get
Ain't that shit happening in 2025?
Come on, man. Come on, man. And this is what they know, Alabama, when they say ain't nothing new under the sun. It's the same old politrick. That's what they talking about, ain't new under the sun. They've been putting this bullshit, playing both sides against the middle since day one. It is what it is, but we got to get past skin color, because that's gonna pin you in to not understanding that it's people who look like you who may even be claiming that they're you, but they're not you. That's the very first of the first sell-ups. As a matter of fact, they're the very first Europeans to come over here. Brown skin, heavily melanated. Don't get it twisted. Remember, they talk about what's my man name, Anthony Johnson, the very first slave owner. They hate to tell you.
You mean the supposed enslaved person that becomes a slaver and had almost 1,000 slaves or something, whatever.
But he was an indenture. That nigga was from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
His daddy was an indenture. He came from Europe, a nigga.
But again, and I'm not disagreeing with anything what you're saying, Cosmo. How do they become white? Where is the transition? And by the way, in Lovecraft Country, for those in the chat that did see it, and you saw it too, remember the spell of that same character, Annie, which is Ruby in Lovecraft Country, went and turned into a white woman to get a job at Marshall Fields? You remember that? Remember that part of the storyline?
And that's where the whoop-de-wop come in. That's where the overlays are underplayed.
So now we got again this transition between hoodoo and voodoo. The point I was going to bring up, and I also want to address that there are many in the chat or some in the commentary that is dispersing over the internet. There was this argument raised about why Hispanics were not, and the arguable position of whether or not Asians were. Now, again, we're talking about Depression era. This is 1932. There were Asians dropped in the Delta in the capacity that the young man was talking about. They were lifted up by their Caucasian indirect relations or possible relatives, because Asians are Caucasian, quote unquote, and then put as a buffer. If you notice, the man was on the black side of the street, remember? And trying to have a little Coolio, trying to have a little soul brother, really? And the woman was serving the white customers on the other side of the street. You hip to that part, right, Cosmo? I'm talking about the Asian culture.
Yeah, I think that.
Now, this manner goes all the way back to the Jewish shopkeeper, primarily in the East Coast, like the Big Apple, and became these wedges within our community, right? Because the notion being the whites would not taint themselves with niggas. Because they meant nigga when they said nigga. You feel me? At this time, this is Jim Crow era, we're led to believe, right? The 1920s going into the 1930s.
Well, we gotta be
These
careful.
Asian citizens.
Right there.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
We gotta be careful right there. Many of the designers or creators of the myth of this invented heritage of African Americans hidden inside of indigenous Americans was created in the quote unquote roaring 20s or the Harlem Renaissance. You dig what I'm talking? The whole story.
And let's not forget the American Eugenics Society on the campus of Yale University in 1926. But cook, brother, cook.
But remember, many of the people, the Nora Thurstons,
you talking about Zora Neale Hurston? Yeah, let's not forget Richard Wright and all the other, Alain Locke, all the supposed Renaissance, like you said, from the Harlem Renaissance.
Now they went through the schooling. They went through the MK Ultra schooling. They went to Columbia. They went to Chicago. They went to Howard. You did what I'm talking about. They did their rounds.
And let's not forget the Hoochie Coochie Negro from Harvard, W.E.B. Du Bois. But go ahead, cook, bro.
No, he in there with him. He in there with him. He know Melville Herkovich and all them. They know them personally. You dig what I'm talking about? So if you think that these boys was just walking around in niggas' hoods and knew what was going on, no. They had infiltrators who was willing to work for a stipend to get a hand up. These become your quote unquote boule. This gets invented in the early 1900s, early 1901, 02, 03.
Yeah, well, they were in the first decade because the Divine Nine gets kicked off after Sigma Pi Phi between 1908 and 1909. The Niagara movement is at the same time. But cook, brother, cook.
You dig what I'm saying? So it's out of the minds of these decrepit sellouts with brown skin. You dig what I'm talking about? Knowing good and well they ain't gotta drop a nothing African or never heard about nothing African. Knowing good and well they go invent a tale. White folks tell them in hopes of, bolstering black solidarity. You dig what I'm talking about? And invent a tale. Right? We didn't even know that it existed. They just start telling it. You see what I'm saying? So we gotta be very careful and then understand that these are movies. They're not supposed to be 100% historically accurate. The only reason y'all even getting something out of this is because your spiritual eyes are turned on. So don't hope that this is the end all be all, because it's not. Because they ain't made your movie yet. That's all I'm saying. And I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here. And then in the words of my big homie, you dig what I'm talking about? Alabama post millennium.
None you said before you go. Can you smell what she cooking?
Yeah.
That used to be the catchphrase of the Brahma bull, the Rock.
Hey, the Rock. You dig what I'm talking about? Now y'all Go ahead and cook, man. Another good bill, sis. I think for all y'all who haven't seen Sinners, that's definitely worth going to take your family to the movie theater, going to see it. You did what I'm talking about on bootleg.
Don't bootleg it. Before you go, let's address one quick part about the deal, which is historic, regardless of whether or not the Zionists are trying to block it. He gets what's considered first dollar gross. That means every ticket purchased, Ryan Coogler gets the first dollar. Please tell people that. Please stress that. That's extremely important. That's why I'm bringing it up before you go. So again, I wouldn't tell people these high ass prices and this Trump-induced tariff, inflationary, and economic situation. But in this case, with this film, he gets first dollar gross. He had the last rights of concern, the last edit, and to put the cherry on top, though he'll be near retirement age since he's almost 40, in 25 years, this original IP will revert back to his ownership.
Yeah.
We need to be discussing
Now,
that when we tell people to go. That's what we need to inform them about why you go, and word of mouth will do the rest.
So is it cool? Does it revert back to Coogler, or does it revert
Yes, it reverts back to Ryan. Then these scandalous bastards with Variety and the Hollywood Reporter, they're inside journalism, quote unquote, went apeshit as if this was some unusual out of the. Then Ryan set the record straight. This is not the first time, and neither is he the only one that has been offered such a deal. The other thing, just on the technical side of it, the difference between film and digitized format. This was shot in 70 millimeter and on a scale of IMAX. So if you can go, whether it's in one of those 4K studios where they have the immersion experience, where they put mist in your face when you see blood spattering, or the volume shakes your chair when you see the gunshots and all this type of stuff, or go to IMAX. Again, what's historic for this film is this young brother is getting not just a bag, he will own his idea, which you should already be doing. Would you agree?
Yeah, but you gotta, you sign deals for distribution and use. You did what I'm talking about. How they work that out. I know it reverts back after 25 years. It does. 30. It used to be 35. It's 30. And in music, it used to be in perpetuity. You did what I'm talking about. They just kept these stuff. But does when Ryan Coogler gets his, does the producers and the
I don't have details. I just wanted the conceptual bullet points, so that whenever you're doing word of mouth, as we do back in the day amongst the people, let that be known. First dollar off the ticket.
Right.
Feel me?
That's dope. That's dope.
All
'Cause
right.
the last person I heard who did that, wasn't it Tarantino? Wasn't it Tarantino with Django? He got a deal like that?
He may be one of those, but again, we are talking about an Italian, right?
Right.
Now, the other just fast fact, about Chris Nolan is probably the most preeminent director that deals with the IMAX environment. He schooled Ryan and took him under his wing on how to shoot this in this fashion. Most movies are going to be like the Avatar, or like in his case, the Batman series, or the supposed blockbusters franchises from Marvel Universe, etc. These are usually these highly techno CGI based type blockbusters. But the fact of film, which most of us don't even, like I pointed out with the documentary of Tulsa in real time, this was in film. Film at 16 or 24 frames per second, I can't remember which it was, but as far as the speed is concerned, it gives the act of motion. digitized format that we're currently being bombarded with and immersed assumes the illusion of symmetry. You feel me? Of without but when you're talking about what film, remember back in the day, you and I, well, you maybe not as old as I am, but remember those movies that you were shown in home economics
Alabama, ain't
or sex
nobody
ed?
old as you.
No, I'm dirt. I understand that.
Dinosaurs
I'm
ain't
dirt.
old as you,
Yeah,
Alabama.
and I got that. So when they were showing you those in home ec, which most of you don't even know what the hell home economics is, or the sex ed classes like Reefer Madness, those training films that was on 8mm, etc. But this brother shot it in 70mm and shot the whole thing for that experience. It gives that same.
It does look. It makes it pop. It gives it
panoramic.
Yeah, and it gives it an alive look. That many of the movies today it just doesn't have. You know what I mean? The movie looks flat. This movie popped out at you a little bit because it's real. You know what I mean? Like you could tell these were real situations. They were really in a barn. They were really playing the piano. You dig what I'm talking about? You can see it.
I guess the closest comparison would be if you remember your first experience with Bonnie and Clyde, and particularly with that closing kill scene. Where you felt the bullets impact your body. So, not to get too far afield on this, and I hear the boondocks creeping on me, baby girl. So I'm probably going to have to exit stage left like Snagglepuss. And thank you for the time, sis. We're going to have to get on that birthright citizenship. Peace and love, my brother and my sister from another mister.
All right, now, Alabama, I'm about to check up out of here, too. You dig what I'm talking about? Sharing on the other line myself. You dig what I'm talking about? Salute to everybody who came through, show love to my sister, man. Make sure you come up. The video, I'm sure she's not done. She probably just stepped away for a second, man. But, let me look at the chat real quick, see what they talking about. See what they talking about. He said, I saw the 70mm IMAX at the AMC in San Francisco. Well worth it to see it on the screen. Yeah, they got them out here too. Rochester, they got a bunch of MJRs out here too with the IMAX experience in it too. It's dope. If y'all can go see it, I didn't know that you get the first $1. Definitely go see it, y'all. Definitely go see it. You dig what I'm saying? Now you been there. What you doing? Music heals, but it can also make you ill. Okay. What y'all got going on, man? Hey, man. I think sis then fell off. You know what I'm saying? She'll be back though in a minute. Try to hold it down for a minute or so, but Kung Fu Kid about to go kick it and go eat. You know what I mean? Stir fry tonight is gonna be fat. That fat. You know what I'm saying? Got somebody who love me with me stir fry. So y'all get somebody who love you. And listen, if ain't nobody told you today, man, let me be the first to tell you, Cosmon love you. Don't nobody else love you. You hear me? So with that being said, man, y'all go to Cosmon Cal TV, sub, like, share, make sure y'all thumbed up down here. You dig what I'm talking about? Make sure you go when you leave, before you leave, hit the subscribe button and then make sure you hit the all button. You know what I'm talking about? Y'all go with Cosmo and Cal, do the same thing, man. Sub, like, share. Be coming in the morning. You the open topic in the morning. I've been I've been on this. Man, I've been on some other stuff. But y'all can come through, come kick it with your brother. You dig what I'm saying? And we'll top it up then. You dig what I'm saying? Going live about 9 tomorrow morning. You dig what I'm saying? I'm sure somebody live, OTK, Smoke, or somebody live, Bap, somebody. So you dig what I'm saying? Y'all going over there, man. I don't even know how to switch things or none of that stuff. They too advanced for me. You dig what I'm saying? But peace, y'all. You dig what I'm saying? Love, light, and balance out there, man. And I'm gone, okay? Hey, well, nobody here with me. Well, y'all can. Hey, all I need y'all to do is just breathe in and let that light in. Cause I'm Cosmine, y'all. I'm out. Peace.
All right, y'all. We out of here. Good night.